Hi everyone. So for my behavior project, I chose to target a waiting behavior. Before intervention, my client had a very hard time waiting for an instruction without touching the stimuli that was in front of him. This was making trials quite difficult, and error corrections were happening more often, which were challenging for him. We also noticed similar behaviors when it came to waiting for preferred items when someone else had them. It was important to build up his tolerance for waiting in order to increase his learning curves and his ability to play in close proximity to peers without stealing their toys. So, the purpose of my study was to determine whether explicit verbal reinforcement, along with a visual indication of the passage of time, could act as a tool to teach the receptive instruction to wait when presented with neutral stimuli and a delay of reinforcement in the presence of preferred items for a child with autism. And I used a multiple baseline design across stimuli for this intervention. So my participant was Thomas. He's 6 years old and he has a diagnosis of autism. He attends IBI Clinic. He has been attending since September 2015, and this intervention took place in his classroom at the clinic that he attends. The dependent variables of this study were the number of trials in which he was able to successfully wait for an instruction or access to a preferred item for the entirety of the specified interval. We define this as hands off of the stimuli, so on his lap or on the table, remaining seated, and for the preferred condition, we also included perseverative manding, so he could only mand for the item once. If he continued to mand more than once, then that was considered an incorrect score. Explicit verbal cues such as amazing waiting or great waiting were used and was paired with visual check marks on the token board that he already used for acquisition skills, so he had exposure to that already. The independent variables for this study were neutral stimuli, so we defined that as any of his program material, and preferred stimuli, which was anything that he verbally requested for. We conducted IOA data by videotaping the session, and then a secondary observer would score the session at a later time just due to the shortage of staff. So for baseline, IOA was collected for 40% of the sessions with a mean score of 95% reliability. And for the intervention condition, their IOA was collected for 31% of the sessions and it had a 91% reliability score. Treatment fidelity was conducted by a secondary observer using a checklist, also by watching the videotape sessions. During baseline, 5 sessions were scored with 100% integrity, and during the intervention, 8 sessions were scored with 98.5% integrity throughout this condition. So the results of this study, we broke down durations into intervals of 1, 2, 5, and 10 seconds, 10 seconds being our terminal end goal. For baseline, he was below 30% success for the neutral stimuli and around 65% for the preferred stimuli. By the end of the intervention period, Thomas was working on the 10-second interval for both conditions. He seemed to be doing better with the preferred stimuli condition than the neutral, and this may have something to do with his motivation to gain immediate access to the preferred items as opposed to his motivation to earn check marks for the neutral condition. Some of the limitations of this study was that we were unable to get to the generalization and maintenance condition for the intervention just due to time constraints. So testing across environments and with peers as opposed to adults would be very helpful in the future. Also some programming material such as sorting. He was sorting plates and bowls and cups and stuff like that, and that was more challenging for him to avoid touching as opposed to letters and numbers. Some things were just a little bit more appealing to him. So controlling for variables such as which program material was more difficult for him might have been valid information for us to collect. There was also no way to control whether the two conditions were influencing each other, so perhaps a reversal design might have been something to look into for any future interventions that might be similar to this. And just as an update, we're happy to say that Thomas is still progressing through the intervention program, and hopefully we will be testing for generalization in the next week. Thanks for listening.